All right, boys, let's go.
Welcome back to another Northeast Offshore report from On the Water. You can probably tell that I am not Jimmy Fee, and I am not joined by Anthony DeCicci this week.
No, I am definitely not Cheech. I'm Andy Nebreski, the design manager at On the Water, and this is Matt Hefner. We're going to be bringing you the reports, the play-by-play of what's been happening in the offshore scene. Unfortunately, it seems like if you wanted to sum up the offshore fishing, it's the weather blows this year. It's been pretty terrible conditions. It seems like you might get one day out of the week where it's fishable. So we're not getting a steady supply of reports.
It's been challenging, to get a quality report. And down south, you got things like algal blooms happening that are kind of creating issues with water quality and visibility and things like that. So it has definitely been a tough season so far. I would say last year things started off pretty hot and heavy as compared to this year. It's been a struggle for people in some parts of the coast. So we got. Down south, just to summarize kind of what Andy and I will be talking about this week, we got small school bluefin abundant off of New Jersey and Long Island. Big yellowfin are scattered from the midshore to the canyons, mixed in with some of those smaller bluefin closer to home. There's a lot of tournament fishing going on this week down in New Jersey and Maryland. So we got white marlin also making a showing in the canyons down there. Big eye tuna bite popped off at Wilmington Canyon this past Sunday, and avoiding algal blooms, like we said, has been the key, finding that blue water this week. So
yeah, and that's one thing I've heard a lot of this, and I've actually witnessed it. I was out about a week and a half ago. Real dirty, kind of milky-looking water. Yeah. And I guess there's actually been an unusually high amount of a phytoplankton, a particular type, I forget the name of it, but it's been kind of a strange occurrence. It does sound like it's finally starting to settle down, but it's really made the inshore water real murky, low visibility.
Yeah.
I got a friend that's a spear fisherman. He was out last week diving off of the wind farm off of Block Island, and he said you could hardly see 10 feet underwater. It was just real tough conditions, and that's certainly been affecting the tuna fishing. They're very much sight-feeding animals, and I'm sure that's been some of the reason we haven't seen the inshore bite light up like it has in years past.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see these videos on social media and stuff of the waters down on Long Island off the beaches look beautiful right now, but it's because it's that turquoise, greenish blue color, and as great as it looks to be swimming in, I mean, you step in the water, you lose sight of your hand in a couple minutes.
Yeah, you can't even see your feet.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot to run through this week. The guys are actually down at ICAST, so we should have touched on that, but Andy and I are filling in for Jimmy and Anthony, who are eating like kings down at ICAST. I saw a photo of Jimmy with a plate of fried chicken and pancakes. So they're enjoying themselves, living life to the fullest.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, ICAST is the biggest fishing show. Yes. Retail, it's worldwide. People come from far and wide. All the newest gear, all the newest trinkets. So those guys are down there checking out all the new stuff that's coming out for 2025. And that's why you're looking at us today.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, though, honestly. But yeah, I mean, they haven't. So obviously, they're not getting offshore this week. But Andy, I've had some scheduling conflicts and things like that where I've been trying to get offshore and I just haven't been able to make it happen yet. But you've been offshore, or at least tuna fishing, a couple times. I'm not sure how far out you went.
Yeah, I've gotten out twice. I haven't gotten out to the canyons, which is my favorite. That's kind of where it's at for me. But I did do a trip back in June east of Chatham. It was one of those trips where the day before it had just absolutely gone bonkers at Crab Ledge. Bluefin tuna were blowing up everywhere. We got out there, and there's like not a single whale. There's 85 boats, and everybody's just kind of looking at each other, trolling around. And it just wasn't happening. So we were fortunate. We had a friend out there. We got a call that he had found some fish about 10 miles southeast of Crab Ledge, which is really kind of like a no man's. That's where you got to go fluke fishing in like 90 feet of water.
Right.
So we picked it up and steamed over there, and sure enough, there was a lot of birds. You could tell there was something going on. A lot of birds in the water, which I always think is a good sign. A lot of people overlook that. Yeah. People are looking for actively feeding birds, but you see a big pile of birds sitting in the water.
They're doing something there.
They're there for a reason.
Right.
And so we basically just kept dragging our spread, around these flocks of birds. And we got one bite pretty quick, broke it off, unfortunately, and then picked up another one. I think it was a 63-inch bluefin.
Oh, nice.
Good size fish, so that kind of saved the day. And then I made a trip about probably a little over a week and a half ago. It was another kind of time like now, like it had been the wind had been cranking for a week straight. Nobody got out. Had no intel whatsoever to go on. But we had a window, so we kind of set out. We went south of the vineyard, started out where we thought the fish should be, which was, just south of the claw. We put lines in, started trolling south towards the dump, and it was just absolutely lifeless. It was like you might see a bird every mile. No whales, no porpoises, and we're like, what's going on?
A little
this isn't happening.
Make that run and have nothing out there.
So we grounded out. Actually got a couple big bluefish, which is kind of not that exciting.
Yeah, I guess it's a
kind of a
consolation.
downer.
Yeah.
But at least it was something. So we kept grinding it out. I was fishing with my friend Larry Backman, who's one of the best offshore guys that I fished with. Wealth of knowledge. He's kind of my Yoda of offshore fishing, and he just stuck it out. We went all the way down to the shipping lanes. Yep. Saw some unusually small mola, but that was it. There was nothing else out there.
Yeah.
Started working our way back up, got to the southwest corner of the dump, and started marking some real big concentrations of bait, like bait balls, just randomly scattered. And like that was the best signs of life we had seen in 8 hours. So we're like, let's work this area. And by that time, it was getting close to 4 o'clock. And we finally managed to pick up a fish, hit a spreader bar, the rainbow-colored spreader bar.
Yeah.
And it wasn't big. It was 42, 43-inch bluefin tuna, but it saved the trip.
Yeah, it's something.
And I actually, the highlight of the trip for me was I had an encounter with a drone. We were flying the drone. We were filming
I saw
segment.
your viral clip.
We were filming a segment for my YouTube series, which is called Living Off the Land and Sea. And so Adam Eldridge, our camera guy, was there, and we had the drone up, and we were trying to, get the spread behind the boat in action. And so he was bringing the drone back into the boat, and it was my job to catch it. So we went up to the bow of the boat. And turns out landing a drone on a boat that's bobbing up and down, and there's wind coming from one direction, it's not easy.
Yeah,
it
how
seems
did
like
you
it should
land
be
with
easy.
that job?
Nobody else would want her to do it, so I
Well, I don't blame him.
I'll catch the drone. And turns out the blades on those things are pretty damn sharp.
Yeah,
and
they move quick.
I got my fingers, both hands went into the blades of the drone, and it just sliced 4 of my fingers. Bled like a stuck pig all over the front of Larry's boat. But fortunately, there was a guy up in the tower, and he was filming it. And so he got a video of it, and he got video of the aftermath. And I actually made the qualified captain with the Golden Glove Award. So it wasn't like I did something bad to make qualified.
Right.
I didn't crash a boat or
do
something
what you worry
stupid at the
about.
boat ramp. But
Yeah.
I made it onto qualified captain. So that was my my big time moment so far of my
Claim to
offshore
fame
season.
of this tuna season, yeah.
So yeah, if you're trying to land a drone on a moving boat, I highly recommend wearing a pair of gloves.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, at least we know you have the skills for next time. So we'll get you a couple safety gloves, and we'll get you back out there with Adam to be the official drone lander. But so I mean, let's jump into what's going on this week down south. It sounds like Andy's had an eventful tuna season so far. I wish I could say the same. But busy time of year down south. We got a lot of fishing tournaments going on. The Ocean City Tuna Tournament, I believe it's the 37th annual Ocean City Tuna Tournament, was going on this past weekend. Some good action down there with that. We also have the Jimmy Johnson Atlantic City Fishing Tournament going on this weekend down in New Jersey. So that started, I believe, Sunday and goes until the 19th. So we're going to run through all of that in just a moment with you guys. The Northeast Offshore Report is brought to you by SiriusXM Marine. Fish mapping is SiriusXM Marine's most comprehensive plan and is available on your boat's display and includes access on your phone or tablet via the Fish Mapping app. Serious anglers use every advantage available, and SiriusXM marks the spots where bait fish gather and game fish hunt. Learn more at SiriusXM.com/fishmapping. The Northeast Offshore Report is also brought to you by Garmin Marine. Check out the Panoptix PS70 stainless steel through-hull transducer. It's powered by Garmin's Rapid Return Sonar, which gives you live sonar views up to 1,000 feet below the surface. See fish live, catch fish deep. Go to www.garmin.com for more info. And last but not least, the Northeast Offshore Report is brought to you by Canyon Runner, who we'll hear from in just a little bit with another intel-filled report. So lots of offshore tournament fishing in the Mid-Atlantic region this week. We're going to start with a report from Taylor Backey at Always Bent Fishing OC out of Ocean City, Maryland. Taylor reported on the 37th Annual Ocean City Tuna Tournament this past weekend. It happened from the 12th to the 14th, so Friday the 12th was the first day. Taylor said there was an inshore bluefin bite over Massey's Canyon along with several other nameless lumps in the 15 to 30 fathom range, which led to quite a few bluefin being weighed in for the tournament. A couple of those bluefin, he said, hit spreader bars, but most of the fish were taken with skirted ballyhoo. Taylor was out with Mark Montgomery on the Bad Habit. They managed a 125-pound bluefin on Friday, the first day of the tournament, and they were later knocked out of first place, unfortunately. He mentioned that only yellowfin tuna were caught at the Wilmington on Friday, which is why they stuck to their inshore bluefin plan. Figured they find a couple bigger fish than yellowfin. But by Sunday, things had really shifted. On Sunday, Taylor said the big eye bite turned on in Wilmington Canyon, and that's what ended up bumping them out of first place and winning the tournament. Taylor said their 125-pound bluefin was bested by a 191-pound big eye caught by Don Stedman of Wrecker Sport Fishing. So congrats to the Wrecker crew on securing the W with the big eye. With a big eye, I should say. Taylor also mentioned that his buddy Remo, who was not in the tournament, caught wind of that big eye bite. He ran out on Sunday afternoon and was wolf-packed by 5 big eye tuna in their spread, which is pretty amazing. And luckily for their crew, they managed to land all 5 on his 37-foot Sea Hunter. So, yeah, I mean, to have 5 in your spread at once and 5 knockdowns, land all 5 fish.
It takes some luck and skill to
little chaotic.
Get 5 big eye.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not easy.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, Taylor said they're planning to try fishing around those inshore lumps again for yellowfin and bluefin this week. He also noted that they'll most likely be sticking to trolling since that's what's been working, but they're also planning to try chunking. So apparently the chunk bite has been developing a little bit off of New Jersey and Delaware and Maryland, that area. So moving up the coast just a little bit, continuing on the tournament front, the Jimmy Johnson Quest for the Ring Championship Fishing Tourney is currently underway out of Atlantic City, New Jersey, until this Friday, July 19th. Sunday the 14th was a tough day overall. I've been following the updates on my phone, which will give you that website so you guys can follow along with the live updates as well. But
that's probably the biggest offshore tournament in the Northeast, I would say, is the Jimmy Johnson.
Right, and it started with the Jimmy Johnson tournament in Florida. This is like kind of the Mid-Atlantic leg of the Jimmy Johnson tournament. So I know that they do one down in Florida as well. It's a different time of year, but yeah, this is one of the bigger tournaments that happens on the Northeast coast or the Mid-Atlantic coast. So Monday sounded like it was a better day than Sunday. And as of Tuesday today, at the time of this report, the catch tallies are currently 3 blue marlin, 46 white marlin, which jumped from 3 white marlin yesterday. That was pretty much all that was caught. And then by the end of the day, it said 46 white marlin on their live updates, which is, something must have happened out there, whether it was a, change in temperature or what. But yeah, 3 blue marlin, 46 white marlin, 1 big eye tuna, 5 yellowfin tuna, and 8 mahi. No wahoo or sailfish just yet, so we'll continue to keep a close eye on the standings this week. And if you want to follow along with live updates, you can go to jjfishweek.catchstat.com. That's where I've been looking at all those live updates. It's fun to see, who's catching what, some of the sizes of the fish, the releases and stuff. So definitely check that out if you're interested in keeping up with the tournament scene this week. A little further north, not on the tournament front, but we actually had Joseph Frizella, who he and his dad last year set the new state record for king mackerel in New Jersey. We wrote about it in the Angler's Almanac last year. So he was out. Joseph was out on their 36-foot lures called the Crime Scene out of Manasquan, and Joseph and his buddies, I should say, fished 40 to 50 miles out over a series of lumps and wrecks in a patch of 75 to 77 degree water. So looking for that high 70 degree water this week has been key, and also, of course, course, blue water, as we mentioned earlier. But Joseph said they were fishing 150 to 200 feet, and they put a 6-rod spread of sterling trackers and ballyhoo out just to cover some ground and find some life. Once they found tuna chicks, Joseph said, kind of like you had mentioned, Andy, that, they're just sitting there on the surface, but they found some birds, and it led to automatic action from school-sized bluefin. They got a quick limit and decided to jump between bird piles, which yielded 6 more schoolie bluefin on jigs. So they were able to get them on jigs as well. It sounds like there have been some big sand eels out there. I know that Joseph and those guys were getting them on Ron Z's, so that's a pretty solid sand eel impression, the big, long, tapered, soft plastic like that. And going off of that, we talked to Jason at Fisherman's Supply in Point Pleasant Beach. Jason said that the area from the Atlantic Princess Wreck to Chicken Canyon is full of life. We got solid numbers of undersized bluefin being caught on the troll, on jigs, and more recently, a couple have been caught on the chunk. So going back to what we were saying about the guys down closer to the Wilmington out of Maryland, thinking about trying the chunk bite this weekend. So I guess that has something to do with water temperatures and finding that warmer water where you can kind of get a chunk bite going, get some fish in your slick there. He said that Jason also said that the yellowfin big eye action has been in the canyons has been spotty, but when you can find them, the getting is good. Trolled ballyhoos, again, with a blue and white Islander Hawaiian eye, have been getting the job done, along with chatterlures, side trackers, and green taking some fish. Jason also mentioned that the Little Italy area has some quality bluefin that are being caught on trolled ballyhoo. So it seems like trolled ballyhoo is one of the hot baits this week. I'm not sure quite why that is.
Yeah, you can never go wrong. I mean, I fished with a number of different captains, and it seems like every boat I fished on, the captain has a totally different spread. You know, guys like Joe Huckemeyer, the Helen H. He'll trail all birds on chains. He'll have 9 lines out there. Every single one of them is a green machine chain with a bird in front of it. But yeah, ballyhoo is the way to go. It's I think probably the most effective, whether you're fishing east of Chatham for bluefin in the bay or fishing the canyons.
It's a confidence bait for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's kind of a go-to. Yeah. So you can never go wrong.
Well, there will probably be a big run for ballyhoo at a lot of the Jersey tackle shops this week, I can imagine. There will. Especially with the tournament going on still, so you know that those guys are going to be, chomping at the bit to get some fresh ballyhoo on their boats. But last but not least, from Jersey, we got Liam at the Real Seat in Brielle. Liam reported that the midshore grounds have some small bluefin tuna that are being caught mostly on nomad jigs and UVT jigs. I've heard a lot of good things about these UVT jigs this year. Haven't fished with them, but a lot of guys are saying they're real durable. Like the paint, doesn't scratch off as easily, which when you're beating up on, if you're hitting bottom or anything like that, or you get a couple fish on one jig, it tends to, really wear down a little bit. So I'm interested to kind of fish with those, hopefully later this season when I can get out. But along with the jigs, some fish are taking topwaters like Mad Mantis poppers and Real Seat poppers. Liam also mentioned that there have been a few slightly bigger bluefin in the mix, up to 55 inches, and there are still some quality yellowfin mixed in with those small bluefin, although they have not been as abundant as they were last week. Liam also said that the giant bluefin are scattered across the inshore grounds, and they're being caught mostly on trolled ballyhoo again. And this week, a few legal fish around 71 inches have been plucked out of the land of the giants, which is mostly in the shipping lanes around 15 miles or so out from the coast of New Jersey, northern New Jersey. So before we jump into what's happening offshore in New England, we're going to give you a quick update from Canyon Runner.
Hello, on the water. This is Dean from Canyon Runner Sport Fishing with the July 7th through July 14th Northeast Mid-Atlantic Fishing Report recap. We continue to be plagued by tough weather and tough fishing conditions. As you can see here on our boat map, we've had limited weather windows. Starting from the southern half out of Ocean City, we saw very slow canyon fishing this past week with an awesome turnaround by week's end. Mid-shore, we finally started to see a uptick in bluefin and yellowfin tuna, although it was a very short window. So you can see here in the food court area, and the 12 and 19 fathom lumps were holding bluefins that were trolled. We also saw the season's first double-digit white marlin reports out deep. This would be from the deep of the Baltimore through the Poor Man's Canyons. Very exciting. A lot of green water in this area, which is what we attribute the slow fishing to. Moving northern from the mid-Atlantic, northern edge of New Jersey to the southern part of Long Island. We saw excellent fishing midshore in the beginning of the week, with several boats posting double-digit yellowfin catches, with jigging and popping being the key to getting these bites. Unfortunately, the crowd killed the fishing, and the days preceding the bite were marked with minimal withdrawal. The crowd was between 60 and 100 boats during some of those days. We also saw nice action on yellowfin tuna with limited big eye capture from the Spencer Canyon all the way through the southwest corner of the Hudson. Moving north from the northeast corner of the Hudson, or 100 Square, out to West Atlantis, we saw fantastic rod and reel catches of yellowfin, with several boats boasting 25 plus yellowfins per trip, and big eyes of up to 7 to 10 big eyes per trip. Incredible action. This is again this main eddy that's been here. Nice piece of water, as you can see here. Nice hard edge, great fishing. Locally, off Montauk, continue to see a steady stream of giant bluefin tuna being caught. The key to that fishing is going to be finding the whales. We've seen been a great bite thus far. As we move out east, we finally saw our first real eastern water development with the pocket of water in the Atlantis area and off the hydrographers area. Both those locations holding good quantities of yellowfin and big eye tuna. We've also seen limited interaction with giant bluefins as well, and great sightings of billfish, white and blue marlin. Moving eastward off Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, we still continue to see spotty giant bluefin tuna and limited amounts of school tuna. We assume this fishery will continue to develop over time. Most of the fish from Maine to the southern or northern edge of Massachusetts are going to be caught anchored up with live bait, and a majority of the Cape fish, which will be the school fish, are going to be caught jigging and popping and trolling. Thank you.
So the Canyon Runner Sport Fishing Team is here to help you catch fish. They offer coaching and concierge services, seminars, and a virtual captain system, which will exponentially help increase your catches inshore, midshore, and in the canyons. The report they provide gives you a sampling of what their virtual captain system looks like, which serves as your co-captain, providing all the fish catching and safety intel, including a built-in warning system and more. It gives you the ability to track over 400 member boats and 15 pro staff boats in real time. Check them out at canyonrunner.com.
All right, so we ran through kind of what's happening in the Mid-Atlantic region from Maryland all the way up to Long Island, Montauk, things like that. So, Andy, do you kind of want to run through what's been going down in
Yeah, sure. It
New
sounds
England?
like your reports have been a lot more encouraging than mine.
A little bit of warmer water, maybe, to the south.
Yeah,
of it,
hopefully all those fish down there are moving their way up.
I hope so.
I'm going to start up north in Maine and work our way back down here on Cape Cod. Start with Saco Bay Tackle. I spoke with Jack this morning. He says things have really slowed down on the bluefin front up in the waters of southern Maine. He said the bait has pretty much disappeared. Guys are hardly finding enough bait to, bait their lines
Right.
with. And the mackerel especially have thinned out up there. And not very encouraging news from southern Maine. Moving a bit south, I spoke with Captain Bob Weathersby of Seacoast NH Sport Fishing. And they've had a really good bluefin bite for the past couple of weeks up off of the Isle of Shoals. Sounds like that's kind of fizzled out. There's still some fish there, but they're not wreaking havoc and breaking and tearing up the surface like they have been. He said the mackerel have thinned out around the Isle of Shoals, and it's just not what it was, the past 2 weeks, but still worth a look. But he thinks that you might be better off sticking around inshore. There's been a lot of very large schools of pogies, and they're in water from like 30 to 50 feet deep, so
Wow.
relatively close to shore. And he said one of the other benefits about fishing in closer to shore is you don't get the shear waters.
Right.
They stay offshore. And I like birds. I consider myself somewhat of a bird nerd. Nothing I hate more than shearwaters. They're just stupid animals, and there's absolutely nothing worse than finding a school of breaking bluefin tuna, getting up on it, and then throwing a cast into a flock
of birds.
of shearwaters, and they're
Coming back
mean.
with two birds on a
Yeah,
treble.
you try to get them off the hook, and they're mean little birds.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, they're the tuna are starting to move inshore. They're harassing these big schools of bunker. And he said you can get shots at them up top with poppers. You got to be ready. They're popping up quick. He said you can also, fish a live pogie on a weight, drop it underneath the school. He said the only problem with that is, there's a lot of big bass in the mix as well. So You stand a better chance of pulling up a 30, 40-pound striper than a tuna. But, work around, try to mark fish under the schools, try to find those big marks. And that seems to be his thoughts on your best bet. He said there's still some commercial fish being taken off of Scanum and Jeffries. But the word on Jeffries, and I've heard this on several fronts, is that it's infested with sharks.
That's
There's
what I've heard,
a lot
yeah.
of poor beagles. And, they're tearing people up. If you're, poor beagles cool to catch. They're a cool shark. But if you're looking for a giant tuna, they're not your friend. He did mention that the poor beagles seem to be less interested in a live haddock than mackerel or herring for whatever. So
interesting,
if
as
you
a
are
mackerel
fishing bait
shark.
out there, you might be better off finding a just legal size haddock and throwing that on your hook instead of a mackerel or a herring. So no wide open bite this week off the New Hampshire coast, but there is a steady pick, and put your time in, and you should be able to find some fish. He also noted that we have the full moon coming up this weekend, and traditionally that kind of slows things down. So keep that in mind. But really, this time of year, you got to get out there when you can, take your shots whenever you get a shot, and you're not going to catch them if you're sitting at the dock. So next up, we have Captain Andy from Adventure and Catch Charters in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He said basically the same thing. He said Scanum is cooled off, still some commercial fish out there. And same thing on Jeffries. It's basically Shark City out there. A lot of guys are shying away from it because of that. Even though there are fish to be caught there, it's just people don't want to deal with losing expensive hooks and leaders to sharks. He also noted that he's seen a lot of bait in closer to shore. The pogie schools especially are picking up. And he also seems to feel that, take a good look inshore before you make the trek out. Because, with the amount of bait that's welling up in that area, it's probably going to go off sooner rather than later. So
It's interesting to hear all these pogie schools in shallow up north here, because usually in the summer that tends to be a thing that happens, at least from what I know about it, is on the South Shore of Long Island. And they get a lot of these pogie schools, and it brings the bluefin into 400 yards, 300 yards from shore. But that doesn't seem like it's really happening this year. I don't know if it has something to do with those algal blooms we were talking about, but it seems like that inshore pogie bite for big bluefin and stuff has kind of shifted a little bit further north this season. So I'm not sure why, but that's just an interesting note.
Also spoke to Joe from Fisherman's Outfitters in Gloucester. Great job. He's saying it's good one day, cold the next, but overall the fishing has been pretty decent out of the Gloucester area. Said that the fish seem to be moving in. Said there's actually been some nice recreational fish inside of Ipswich Bay. Said they're feeding on herring and mackerel, and they're also starting to see some pogies moving in that area. He said the northern end of Stellwagen and Middle Bank have been pretty good. Those seem to be your best bets if you're looking for recreational size fish. But there's also some fish being caught on the southern end of Stellwagen Bank, and Peaked Hill Bar is kind of picked back up a little bit. It has really been slow the past couple weeks, but it sounds like some fish are moving back into Peaked Hill Bar. Still not fast and furious, but if you put your time in, stick it out, pick around, and you might have a shot at picking up a fish there.
Do we know if there's any influx of bait around there? Are people mostly just kind of trolling and seeing what works for them? Or
It's from what I've heard, it's been both a topwater casting bite.
Oh, nice.
But there's also a trolling bite.
Okay.
Guys trolling spreader bars, 13-inch shells, the bigger size bars. Sounds like there's no rhyme or reason to what colors they're hitting. There's not like sometimes you get white, the fish will key in on that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like put a mix out, mix it up, see what works. It could change from day to day what the fish are, having a preference for. Joe also mentioned that there's fish on Jeffries, but once again, he's noting it's inundated with sharks right now for whatever reason. And that is pretty much it from his report from Gloucester. Then picking our way south, I spoke to Connor from Monahan's Marine in Weymouth. Great shop, great guy, wealth of knowledge. Connor was fishing the OBBC, the Oak Bluffs Blue Water Classic, which happened last week. And so he's a little out of touch on what's going on inside the bay. He said they had a pretty decent trip to the canyons. They fished around the Atlantis to Fishtails area, picked up some decent 40 to 50 pound yellowfin. Sounds like the conditions were real sloppy for that tournament. The bigger boats, the 50 plus foot boats, were able to stick it out. But it sounds like it got pretty sporty. So didn't get as much information from that as I was kind of hoping we would, but I'll touch on that later. We do have some reports from that tournament. Getting back to Connor from Monahan's, he said Middlebank and Peaked Hill Bar are, your best bets for a recreational size bluefin tuna. He's also reporting a lot of bait, a lot of pogies are moving inshore, especially off of the Plymouth area, which last year that was kind of the scene for the whole summer. You had the humpback whales breaching,
that might have been
half
2
a mile
years
off
ago
the
now,
beach.
actually.
Yeah,
but either way, I remember that, seeing videos of people's boats getting knocked into by
exactly.
humpbacks.
The humpback landing on that guy's boat.
So.
But it sounds like they're setting up right in that same area, and he thinks it's just a matter of time before the fish find it. He said there's been a lot of fishing pressure on Stellwagen for the giants, the commercial fleet. If you're looking for a giant, he suggested, stick it out inside of Cape Cod Bay, stay away from the bank. There's just too many boats out there. You're not going to find as many fish in the bay, but if you happen to stumble across one, chances are it's going to bite. So that is the word from Monahan's Marine. We also got a report from Captain Ben Sussman of In the Net Sport Fishing on Cape Cod. In his own words, I will give you Captain Ben's report. He says, last week we ran 20 miles south of the dump to the shipping lanes and didn't find too much life overall. Did come across some fast-moving bluefin airing out on bait alongside pods of dolphins, but even after throwing poppers around the dolphins, we didn't get bit. There was not much bait out there from what they could see, but they spotted a bunch of half-beaks on their way back to port. This is encouraging because that's the first report I've heard of this year of half-beaks. So that is good news. Those can really fire up the topwater bite like nothing else. He said he also was poking around looking for some mahi. They found some really good, prime floating structure, but there was nothing off it. I haven't heard anything yet of mahi inside the canyons. No. But the water, with the temperatures they're at, it's just a matter of time. A couple more weeks, I think, you're going to have a shot at getting some...
Yeah, usually around August.
Yeah, usually mid-August it kind of starts. Through September is kind of the prime time for that, but we're not quite there yet. What else did Captain Ben have to say? He did see some white marlin out there. They had one eat a stick bait and pull the hook shortly after. Promising signs, if only we get a few days of low wind, which does not look like it's going to happen anytime soon.
It does not. I was just looking at the forecast, and it's like, it dips down for a couple hours maybe, but then it's when it's shifting from southwest or south to north and vice versa. And so you get this like maybe an hour of like total glass conditions, and then all of a sudden it's honking in your face from the different directions.
Yeah, the wind machine is angry, like it's been pretty much all year. It looks like the next real window, if you're looking to get out of the canyon, is probably not going to be until Saturday, unless you're driving a 50-foot Westmac or a...
I don't know many
or a battleship.
Yeah,
you might want to stay inshore.
Yeah. But that was a good report from Ben. So just touching on it because we just came out with the Offshore issue, which is the July-August edition of the magazine, and Ben had a great story in that issue that touches on tactics for East Coast versus West Coast tuna fishing.
That was a great article.
Yeah,
actually.
He's from Southern California originally, in San Diego. So
if you haven't read it yet, pick up a copy of the July magazine. We had the Oak Bluffs Blue Water Classic went off last week. Like I said earlier, the weather was not kind, but there was about 15 or so boats that weighed in. And from what it sounds like, a couple of the boats had great trips, but it sounds like it was kind of a grind. There was only 3 marlin caught. There was 2 white marlin, 1 blue marlin, which is the first blue marlin I've heard of from the Northeast Canyons up here.
Same.
Which is good to hear. And generally, you're only going to find them in that real crystal clear blue water. Real warm water, which we're starting to get into now. The temps are up, into the mid to high 70s out in the canyons. Props to No Mercy, a 55-foot Viking. They won the tournament. They had 2 big eye, 2 mid 30-pound yellowfin, 24-pound mahi, which was the biggest mahi weighed in, and they had a white and a blue marlin. So they took home the money. Yeah, the weather was pretty sporty. A lot of the smaller boats never made it out. Biggest tuna was impressive. There was a 235-pound big eye caught by Opportunity, which is an impressive fish. But it sounds like that kind of lights out big eye bite that we had for the past 2 weeks is starting to fizzle.
Yeah.
I think only 5 out of the 15 boats weighed in a big eye, which isn't bad. That's not terrible, but it sounds like that big mass of big eye that we had out there for the prior 2 weeks is kind of fizzled out, which I don't like to report because I love big eye.
I know you're a big eye fan.
They're probably the meanest tuna that swims. They fight harder than, anything else, and they're just mean fish. Tough to bring to the boat. And I think they're my favorite eating of all the tunas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think big eye is it's the best.
Okay.
And then I talked to my good friend Larry Backman this morning. Larry runs the Skipjack. It's a 36 Northern Bay. He fishes out of Falmouth. Very experienced fisherman. Like I said earlier, he's kind of my Yoda when it comes to anything and all things offshore fishing. He said basically, the water is really flattened out in the canyons. There's one really nice, well-defined temperature break. It's just a little bit east of hydrographer right now. But anywhere west of that, it's all kind of flattened out into 76-degree water. No real temperature breaks. The fishing that had been really lights out from Fishtails to Atlantis has become okay. There's good amount of yellowfin out there. There's still some big eye. Starting to see some marlin, starting to see some mahi. Haven't heard of any wahoo yet.
Yeah, me either.
He said the swordfish bite overall seems slow this year, although he went out there twice and got a swordfish each time, so he's not complaining. But it sounds like a lot of the other boats aren't seeing the numbers of swordfish that we've been getting. I guess that is about it. If you're heading out, that temperature break east of hydrographer seems to be, the most promising looking water out there, although I haven't talked to anybody that's actually gotten out there to fish it. Larry did note that he tracks the longliner commercial boats on AIS, which is pretty brilliant because those guys are dialed in more than anybody, and they'll fish through the slop. They don't care if it's 10-foot seas. They had been fishing near Atlantis, West Atlantis. He said they've moved way east and way out. They're actually out off of the seamounts past hydrographer, which is way out there. So that's not normally an encouraging thing if the commercial guys are fishing that far out. And they're mainly looking for tuna and swordfish.
They do a lot of that long lining for albacore tuna too, right?
That's more West Coast.
Okay.
Around here it seems like I used to be on the committee for the Falmouth Offshore Grand Prix, which is a tournament that went on for decades. And we kept logs from each year of what was weighed in year to year. And one time we sat down, we just started looking at the historic catches year after year in that tournament. And it was essentially a canyon tournament. And we noticed that there was years where you would get way more albacore tuna than yellowfin. But most years it would be the opposite. It would be way more yellowfin than albacore. But like once out of every, let's say, 5 or 6 years, you'd get one of those years where, for whatever reason, the albacore would show up big time and the yellowfin would be thin for whatever reason. So kind of an interesting thing. I don't know what that means, but it seems like we haven't seen a big push of albacore tuna in, it's been quite a while now. So.
Yeah, I feel like last year I remember hearing of a handful of people coming in with albacore tuna off of New York and New Jersey, but I don't think it was anything like you were just describing where it's, they're the bulk of the catch. I think
a bumper crop, which is fine by me because as far as eating tuna, they're big eyes up here and albacores, they're down here. I could certainly live without them. They're not terrible, but they're no yellowfin.
Well, it sounds like, plenty of information to go off of, despite, the wind and the weather kind of
putting a little bit of a damper on the bite and on getting out to the canyons, unless you're in one of those larger boats like we were talking about. But great week for tournament fishing. A lot going on out there, especially down to the south. Keeping an eye out for those temperature breaks and weather windows is really, the name of the game this season, it seems like. Seems like you gotta just have your eye constantly on the forecast, looking for the wind, a shift in wind, and sometimes that shift in wind, could lead to a change in temperature breaks in certain areas and things like that. So one of the things that Jimmy and Anthony like to do, I know, to end out their podcast is, pick a social post of something you saw on Instagram or Facebook or something noteworthy this week. So I'll go ahead and share what I found. Bob Wilson, who is the fishing club advisor to the Ward Melville High School Patriots Fishing Club on Long Island, he went out this past week with a buddy. Unfortunately, it wasn't a club trip. They do have one more club trip coming up, he said, but I don't believe it'll be an offshore trip. But Bob Wilson got out with a buddy. He said, ran to the deep overnight in slop, and at first light, stumbled upon skipjack busting on the flats that turned into hundreds of yellowfin tuna. Sickest, craziest topwater and jig bite that I have ever seen. After a wild 90 minutes and boxing up to a dozen 40 to 60-pound fish, we left them biting and went searching for a big eye in the deep. They had no bites other than a few mahi, but then they trolled up the shelf and onto the flats, and after 4 rods went off, they released what they had, called in the morning, and ran home to clean up. So, super eventful morning to find hundreds of yellowfin tuna, blitzing on the surface out there. That's just a sight that everybody loves to see. And, you box up to a dozen 40 to 60-pound fish. Everybody's going home with plenty of meat. So that was a really awesome post that I ran into this week. I initially thought it was, a trip with all the kids going out there, which talk about a trip of a lifetime. You're a high school and fishing club goes out and you catch 12 different yellowfin tuna that are ranging from 40 to 60 pounds each. So that would have been pretty remarkable. Still a great day nonetheless. Unfortunately, the kids weren't there, but great day for Bob. And, he does a great job running that fishing club. They put on 2 pretty awesome shows with Surfcasters Journal, and then they host their own show as well later in the winter. So we're hopefully going to be involved in a couple of those this year. Again, that's the Ward Melville High School Fishing Club. Great operation. Definitely check them out. And if you're on Long Island and you're in that area, consider joining the club if you're a high school student. It's definitely worth doing. Getting into there's not many schools that have fishing programs like that. No. I always wish that mine did.
Same here.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my social post of the week. I thought that was a pretty cool highlight. Hundreds of yellowfin tuna. So it sounds like things are picking up out there.
I'll give you mine. This I just stumbled across this morning. It's been kind of a slow week in my Instagram feed for seeing pictures of tunas. This comes from Big Game Fishing RI. Epic day on the bluefin grounds today. Started on the troll and ended up on the jig. We got the unders and the over. Daiwa Corp USA SK jigs, pink blue silver combo, got most of the bites on the jig. Chatterlure's purple bars got them on the troll. The bite is on LFG. So it sounds like they had a good trip. Those guys are very experienced, good group of guys. They know what they're doing. For them to call it epic, I'm sure it was...
It was actually epic. It's not
actually epic.
Yeah, not just advertising for social media.
It's a very overused word in the fishing community.
Oh, 100%.
But, some people, when you hear it, it's legit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. So, overall, it's definitely been a slower week, like we talked about. We've got everything from algae blooms to unfortunate wind forecasts, basically, just kind of putting a damper on the bite. But, some slightly lower wind in the forecast this weekend, as Andy mentioned, with some solid weather windows. Saturday, I think, looks like the best day in particular. Shifting wind directions over the weekend, it could make for some slower, bumpy travel to or from your fishing spot, especially when that wind shifts from, southwest to northeast or whatever it's going to do. So just keep a sharp eye on that, use good judgment, make good decisions, and remember that no fish is worth a life. So, take your time out there. Best of luck to everybody. If you do get offshore this week, I am hoping to get offshore sometime in the next 2 weeks or so. We'll see. We'll see if we have some updates for you on that front. But Jimmy and Cheech will be back again next week to take it from here.
Yep. And don't forget to tag On the Water magazine in any of your posts on social media. We keep a pretty good eye on those and love sharing what other people are finding out there. So
absolutely.
Tag us and we'll try to get your picks out there.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching, and check back next week for another Northeast Offshore report from On the Water.